One of the world's oldest and best-known holiday tour operators, Thomas Cook, has collapsed. Around 600,000 holidaymakers are now stranded in hotels and resorts around the world, leaving their governments with the task of repatriating them. Around 4,500 Irish customers are believed to be affected. Paul Dunn from Ballymena in County Antrim is one of them. He's on holiday in Tunisia with his wife Gail. They are staying at the Les Orangères resort in Hammamet. On Saturday night, guests there were prevented from leaving to catch their flights because management claimed that Thomas Cook owed them money. Paul has been speaking to our reporter Angus Cox.
I went for dinner in the hotel and came out to the reception. There was quite a lot. In fact, I would say up to 200 folk were just, talking in various groups, which we didn't know what was happening. I heard a gentleman say, "This is ridiculous." I sort of jumped in. I said, "Sorry, what's happening?" And says, "Look, basically, the owner of the hotel, Thomas Cook, owed them money, and they're not allowing anybody to leave out the gates, especially the Manchester flight. Was to leave from the hotel, and basically they were holding on to the Manchester flight. The bus was standing outside the gate, and there were security guards at the gate. There had been a few folk who went to the gate, like a Mexican standoff, and just tried to get out, but they wouldn't let them go. So the management had said, "We're not allowing you to go." They'd also billed those people who were going out, and they'd also billed those who were going out today from the hotel, which was double the amount of what basically that they had, they'd already paid to Thomas Cook. Thomas Cook rep came in, and dear love him, he was trying his utmost to what was a very tense situation and becoming, even more. People were getting angry. It was like a mob-like mentality, to be perfectly honest. In fact, I was standing within this group, and this guy was sort of saying, "Well, look, if there's a lot of us, we could storm the gate, and we could overpower these four guys, and we'd be able to get out. I'll do it if I need to do it," kind of a thing. And then what happened was all the Wi-Fi was cut out. So they took the Wi-Fi off so we couldn't contact anybody. The rep came in, basically tried to calm folk down, went on to his management and Thomas Cook, and they would eventually get onto the embassy and then the Ministry of Tourism for Tunisia. Management team of Thomas Cook, one of them came and made a payment just for the Manchester folk, and so they were allowed to leave then once that was paid.
And Paul, you're due to fly back to Belfast on Wednesday morning. How confident are you're going to be able to make your flight?
I would hope to be. I mean, again, I spoke to, I'm not sure, he's senior management anyway, he's sort of the bosses of the rep, and he's came in the hotel today, I think, to try and sort of calm folk down, reassure folk. And I mean, he said to us today, "Look, I would be wearing this Thomas Cook badge, I'd be out of a job. If I'm, what I'm saying to you is true. We've got the money there to pay. Everything will be fine. Don't worry. Enjoy the rest of your holiday. And you'll be fine to fly home." I mean, I think I'm a bit more confident than I was definitely last night. But again, you just don't know.
And Paul, package holidays such as this aren't cheap. You've paid Thomas Cook up front to travel to Tunisia. Yes. In the event that you were asked to pay more money to the hotel before you left, would you be in a position to do so?
No, I mean, they were asking between 1,800 to 2,500. I mean, this was the big thing. It was the bills that they were asking for was, nearly double the amount. The fact of us having to pay 1,800 to 2,500, there's not a chance.
Not a chance. That's Paul Dunn there from Ballymena in County Antrim. Well, this passenger at Manchester Airport said she had no advance warning that her Thomas Cook flight to Split in Croatia had been cancelled.
Just now at the airport, I checked in and everything on flights, so I just assumed nothing of it. And then when you look at the website and you see stuff and you're like, "Oh yeah, I'm still going to be flying out, etc." And then until I got here, they're like, "No, sorry, we've stopped. Go home now." You're like, "Oh, okay, thanks." So no emails or anything, or not even a text, but no, I don't know what to do.
That's another Thomas Cook passenger experience there. The collapse of the tour operator. The editor of Travel Extra magazine, Eoghan Corry, joins us now. Eoghan, the people like Paul Dunn from Ballymena who are asked for money by hotels or resorts who haven't been paid by Thomas Cook, is that happening a lot?
It's going to be happening a lot more in the next few days. People are unaware, like your Manchester passenger and like the people who showed up in Antalya for a 6:15 flight this morning in Belfast that didn't exist, are only learning what's happening. The Thomas Cook official who came to the rescue is probably out of a job this morning. What's going on behind the scenes is that the British regulators are trying to contact hotels and say, not only are we going to repatriate people, but we're also going to pay the hotel bills. The real issue is hoteliers are very jumpy because they've been stung with big collapses before, and it has the potential of putting them out of business. So the first, they turn to the lowest hanging fruit. They turn to the passenger who's in the hotel and turn on them for the finance, because they don't get paid until 90 days after the guest has left. And it's quite clear that Thomas Cook won't be able to pay them. The question is, who will?
Well, who will?
The British are moving to say we're going to settle with the hotelier as well. This is something that arose in previous collapses, but nobody is quite certain how that would pan out because of the variety of ways that people book holidays nowadays, which include flight only and sourcing the hotel themselves.
I mean, it's extraordinary claims there from Paul that the hotel was essentially preventing guests from leaving to catch their flight.
The phrase being held hostage was being used in social media. The interesting thing is that the Hammamet incident in Tunisia has not been replicated. I think the storm that arose in social media led Thomas Cook to move in before yesterday to try and reassure them, and also to public statements by the British regulators. The reality is that the company only liquidated this morning at 1 a.m. and at 4 a.m. from the Scandinavian customers. This is as big as it gets, Audrey. We've had tour operators who've gone down before. We've had airlines that have gone down before. And we've got retailers. This is a combination of all three on a scale that's never been seen before. So I suspect what will happen in the coming days is a great unravelling of how well built the systems for compensation and repatriation are. And they will be very, very stressed.
And for the Irish tourists who are now stranded abroad, Eoghan, who will bring them home? Will that be the Irish government having to put in place arrangements?
Thomas Cook pulled out of Ireland in 2014. Listeners will remember a very high-profile closure of the Dublin shop in 2009, but they still operate out of Belfast, so it is a responsibility of the British regulator. Quite a few of them will have come from across the border. For instance, the Tunisia flight you mentioned on Wednesday is the only way of reaching Tunisia from Ireland. There are no flights from Dublin, so a lot of Donegal, people like that, but the British government are the ones who will repatriate them. There are 8 routes operating out of Belfast and about 13 flights a week. So the real issue is when it comes down to incidentals, will the repatriation to Belfast be on the same scale as it is to Manchester and Gatwick, the big Thomas Cook, and also will people be allowed to book an alternative airline? I would be very surprised if Ryanair, for instance, don't come in with rescue fares straight away for people. But I can imagine that the retrieval of those costs will take quite a while and would be very complex. But there is a duty of care and a promise from the British regulator, the CAA, to repatriate people, and they have a dedicated Thomas Cook repatriation website set up this morning.
And it will have to happen fairly quickly, won't it? Because people are due home for work and other commitments.
Now, there is another big question because they're talking about October the 5th, running it over till October the 5th. There will be people who have booked for 2 weeks. There will be people who may end up having to stay 2 or 3 days extra. And there will be the incidents of people being moved from one, taking off in somewhere in Spain and going to Greece to pick up passengers. That's what we've seen in large-scale collapses in the past.
And for those people like the woman we heard at Manchester Airport, and you mentioned people arriving in Belfast this morning, essentially for people who have flights booked through Thomas Cook, they really shouldn't show up. Everything's cancelled at this stage. I mean, but they're out a large amount of money, are they, Eoghan?
Yes, absolutely. Don't go to the airport. And who pays your refund? They will be first in the queue for the liquidation. But the British government, the British regulator, has said we're going to refund people. What's really interesting is we had a big collapse with about half the number of passengers. It was big by its scale. It's now been overtaken of Monarch in September 2017. Some listeners will remember that. And the noise, the background mood music from the British regulator is that they probably overcompensated there, and that they're going to look for get-out clauses and ask people who booked, particularly outside of the equivalent of the Irish bonding scheme in Britain, the ATOL scheme, they look elsewhere for compensation. Mm-hmm. There are travel insurance policies that will actually cover failure. They cost not that much more, but a little bit more than the common or garden insurance policy. My experience is that most people travel without that. So whatever is happening this weekend, and the chaos of getting those 600,000 home. By the way, the German wing of Thomas Cook is still trading. They've gone to the federal government in Berlin for a loan. But one bad news for Irish hoteliers is that Neckerman Risen, which is a big inbound tour operator into Ireland owned by Thomas Cook, they've also ceased trading, which means that Irish hoteliers will be out of pocket. But I can tell you the scramble to get compensation is going to take a long, long time because of the scale of this collapse. And obviously there's other impact on non-Thomas Cook holidays for people who bought at the Thomas Cook shops. There were 10 of those in Belfast, Lisburn and Portadown, and there will be questions over whether those contracts are valid. An awful lot of questions and very few answers this morning.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Eoghan Corry, editor of Travel Extra magazine. It's 7:24 now.